Well, we welcome everybody here tonight. I'll call this meeting to order. This meeting and all meetings of this council are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the press in accordance with Wisconsin statutes, so citizenry may be aware of the time and the place and the agenda of this meeting. We'll have a roll call.
Shani Appleby.
Here.
Bruce Brenner.
Here.
Johanna Edwards.
Here.
Nick Gunderson.
Here.
Jim Zandro.
Here.
Scott Rasmussen is absent.
Okay. Well, Scott was going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, but
Yes, he
if
was.
you'll join us in the pledge, I will lead it myself. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I would look for a motion then to approve the agenda.
We'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. I would look for a motion then to approve the minutes from our regular council meeting on July 21st, 2014.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the regular common council meeting July 21st, 2014.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion's made by Edwards, seconded by Appleby to approve the regular council meeting for July 21st, 2014. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. We'll move on to citizens' appearance. Mr. Savoy, library rep.
Thank you very much. First of all, I am keeping my fingers crossed that we don't hear a shrill alarm. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, we've had trouble with water in the elevator shaft. This rain worries me a little bit. We do have an alarm that is gonna go off if it gets too wet down there, so I'm hoping we don't hear that. First of all, we are down in circulation again for the month of June to a total of 13.6%, which I know sounds high, but we're hoping that it's going to even out somewhat. Listening to the news this evening, everybody seems to be having troubles between weather and everything else that's going on this year. I am happy to report that the interlibrary exchange is when we borrow books to come to our library or we send books out to other libraries in the OWL system. We are probably high on the list of sending books out, so we ended up with a $965 credit in the interloan department, which is fantastic for, I think, a library our size that we're able to do that. The other thing, and for those of you who've been on the council for longer than a couple of years, you remember that our book charge per member was quite high. We were pretty high in the county. As of last month, we are now the fourth lowest in the county in terms of what it costs to operate our library here. So we've reduced it from being one of the highest to one of the lowest ones. And fourth is right in the middle of the pack. In Weyauwega County, the circulation is around 298, and we are at 274, so we're a little bit low there. And the other county that's in the OWL system is at 306, so at that 274, I feel very fortunate. I think the gals are doing an excellent job all the way around and keeping us afloat. And before I sit down, I will sit down with this because I am concerned about that library shaft, or that elevator shaft, and I hope this rain doesn't produce a problem for us again. It's been fine for over a year, and for those of you who heard me for 2 years, this is a blessing. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or anything for the library rep? Okay. We will move on then to B, Weyauwega Lake Restoration, Jim Tulfa and Mark Cordes.
First of all, thanks for having me. I'm Jim Tulfa, Vice President for the Weyauwega Lake Restoration. We're here to discuss the possibility of a lake district and how imperative it is to keep the weeds under control that we have out there in the lake right now. We had lake rules in place that got discarded prior to this. Right now, we have boats going through them. We got an early season duck season this year, and we got guys out there at mud ruckers, and they're cutting the hell out of the weeds and spreading the spores all over the place. That, and of course, we'll have the problem again this year with racing out there, with guys that want to do a little fishing and don't want to commit suicide. I got a fella here, his name is Mark Cordes. He's an expert on the weeds. He comes highly recommended by Ted Johnson from the DNR, and his firm stands head and shoulders over anybody else in the state, according to Ted. He knows what's going on out there with the weeds. We have to get this stuff under control. If we don't, we're gonna have a serious, very serious problem. We'll be back to square one again. If you have weeds in the lake, you're gonna slow the current down. If you slow the current down, you're gonna have a sediment buildup again. We have a sediment buildup again, we're gonna have a shallow lake and it'll be filled. It'll be nothing but a mud hole again. We worked too hard, too long for this. We wanna bring this to a head this evening, if we can. Without further ado, let me introduce Mark Cordes from Stantec Corporation.
Thanks. We've only been working with the Lake Association for 1 month, I think exactly. Is that correct? We were out and did a survey on the lake, and they had, as everybody's aware, done a drawdown over a 2-year time period. And there's 2 invasive, well, actually 3 invasive plants in the lake now, maybe more, but that we've mapped and noted. Eurasian water milfoil, curlyleaf pondweed, and flowering rush. The flowering rush is fairly new invasive to the state. It's only present in a very small area in the lake. The Eurasian water milfoil, based on a very preliminary survey, looks to be well under control on the lake. The curlyleaf pondweed, little difference in the speed. Those are all invasive plants. I'm not going to bore you with these things. But the Eurasian water milfoil is a plant that grows from rootstock. So the drawdown, what that does is exposes the root structure to freezing and ultimately kills the plant. Works very, very well, and you don't have to use herbicides. Great control mechanism for that particular plant. Curlyleaf pondweed grows from seed stock. It's called Turion. That, unfortunately, that particular plant, when you do the drawdown, it's basically mimicking Mother Nature, the receding of the water and then the filling of the water back up. And that will actually activate some of those seed, causing those seeds to germinate. So you've seen a slight increase. I wasn't able to find any older mapping, but it appears there's probably about 25, maybe 30 acres of curlyleaf pondweed out there, which will need some sort of management. That being said, I'll just talk briefly. I have about 70 to 80 lake clients right now. Those are municipalities, cities, villages. Those are lake districts and lake associations. The difference being lake associations, it's typically a handful of people that are motivated, handful of people that contribute to those associations. And for all those clients, we have obtained grants, whether it's an association, a district, or a city village. They're all eligible to apply for grants. The issue becomes when you're, whether it's just working on a project or applying for a grant, we apply to the state, we need to show how we're going to get money to fund that, because typically there's a 25 to 33% match on the grant, depending on which type of grant we're looking at, the state. With a district or municipality, you have the ability to levy a tax. And a lot of people don't like that word, but ultimately that's what it is. There's an assessment on property that are within the district. Typically, lake districts, that assessment's very, very low. From what I've seen, the districts I work with, people are very involved in the process, very involved in the projects. Associations, again, it's a handful of people. If those people aren't motivated, either financially or through contributing labor, the associations tend to dry up, the projects dry up, and the lakes tend to somewhat regress. This lake is slightly different than a natural lake in that it's an impoundment. You have a river is designed to transport 2 things, water and sediment. You put the dam on the river, the water still goes through, but the sediment doesn't. So essentially you created a sediment trap, which creates more issues because you have more nutrients in the system. So, again, with this particular reservoir, well, any reservoir, there's typically more issues you need to deal with than you would on a natural lake. That's just the nature of the beast. So with that, I'll open this up for questions. I really, Jim asked me to come here. I wasn't knowing, what really to expect. And if there's questions for me, I'll gladly answer them, but I just wanted to give kind of a brief overview as to where we're at and my experience with working with all three types of entities, associations, districts, and municipalities. Unless there's something else that Jim wanted me to include.
Have you been able to find a root cause for the condition that the lake turned into over the course of time, to backtrack that, to prevent that from, or to look at the causes that created this situation, to possibly combat it at the source?
I can answer that. I went to the Winchester Academy the other day, and they had a meeting there. Matter of fact, there was an article in the paper where they are treating 300 miles of the upper Weyauwega. They got a $100,000 grant. And when I talked to this guy, his name was Brian, I can't think of his last name, he was the host. I said, what's your starting point, what's your ending point? I said, with the river. And he asked me what I was getting at, and I told him, well, Lake Weyauwega is the Weyauwega River, correct? He says, yeah. I says, how much money are you gonna give me? I basically said that to him. And he says, yeah, you're eligible for the grant with us. We can come along on the train with his $100,000, okay? But they're treating it upstream right now with the farmers' runoff primarily, and they're cleaning up all of the brush. They got crews out there that's working constantly out there, from what I understand. And they're treating 300 miles of the river before it gets into here. But what I have to do is I gotta get the AIS survey done first, which is the Aquatic Invasive Species Survey. That gets done first. That's the first baby step. Then Mark goes with the plants. But they attack it, they're gonna be attacking it upstream, okay? It's the Tomorrow River, I forget what their, John Henry is, their title offhand right now.
That's good.
Yeah, so we're eligible for some money from them.
Good, thank you.
And your question is multifaceted. It's a combination of things. You have runoff events that contribute sediment. And as land's cleared, and whether it's agricultural or residential development, there's obviously more runoff. The other thing is rivers naturally transport sediment. People don't realize that. And again, once you put that dam on there, that's stopping the natural transport of that sediment. So even if this area wasn't developed and you put that dam in there, the sediment wouldn't accumulate as quickly. Once you start developing, you have additional runoff. The runoff comes off the land more quickly because of impervious surfaces, things like that. So I see what you're getting at. What's the root cause? Why don't we go there? And that's one of the issues. And it sounds like there is some things in place that are starting to look at that root cause. And I'm guessing the county's probably involved. A lot of land water conservation departments at the county level are usually involved with projects like that as well.
Yeah, it's gotta be a very connected project upstream, other than the Lake Association fighting a battle down here when
Sure.
it keeps pouring in. It's a never-ending,
Huge watershed we've got.
yeah, it's just
Huge.
never-ending battle for them as well, but it's gotta backtrack a little bit too.
This is never going to be a pristine, clear water, lake. It's just not going to be that. Seldom reservoirs are, but you try to lessen the impact, and there's things we can do. Water level manipulation is a good tool because it mimics Mother Nature. So a lot of the best tools we have really mimic what's done in nature. Really trying to out-engineer Mother Nature seldom works. Is what we found. Long and short of it.
Oh, thank you.
So you worked with our region, Marion?
We work with the city of Marion. Montello isn't close by. Weyauwega Chain of Lakes is one of our clients. Trying to think which other ones. White River, Flowage in the West Branch of the White River, which
Twin Lakes.
Twin Lakes.
Chippewa, Floyd.
He probably doesn't. Not Chippewa Flowage is not one of our clients, but we have a number of clients in this part of the state.
When did you work with
So-
Marion? How far back was that?
We worked with them 3 years ago. They decided to go a different direction for 1 year, and then they hired us again this year. And they have a unique
Yes.
problem. They have a very difficult strain, probably one of the most difficult strains of your hybrid Eurasian water milfoil that I've seen, a very herbicide-resistant strain. And we did a experimental 10-acre treatment out there this year. It was extremely successful, and their goal is to apply for a grant in this next round in December 15th through the DNR. But they wanted to do a pilot. Without spending a lot of money, what we did is look at what their budget was. We said, let's do a small pilot test area on the lake. And it proved to be very successful, and we're gonna apply for a grant to do it lake-wide next year.
What work was done prior? It was drained?
It was drained, yeah, it was drained. That was successful as far as the control of the Eurasian water milfoil. And in talking to Ted Johnson, although we don't have any, we have current DNA analysis of the plants. There's a lab in Michigan that can do DNA analysis of these plants. And I think what happened is this really difficult strain of hybrid Eurasian ultimately took over the lake. I think they had very good control. It was again, very herbicide-resistant strain. It's the only time I've ever seen a lake respond where there was a treatment done, and actually, by the end of the season, the numbers were higher than they were pre-treatment, and they'd spent, I don't know what it was, $12,000 or $13,000 to do this large-scale treatment. And that was the year that they decided to go a different direction. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was your question?
I don't remember.
You asked about working with Marion.
Oh,
Yeah, I wanted to see what their whole history was, enough to see,
And I
were
think-
any of their expectations met, et cetera. I'd like to see where there has been,
Well,
how do you know what
as far as
success level you're
expectations,
going
yeah,
for?
it-
You'd like to say, oh, clear water, but
Yeah.
no, that's not.
Yeah, I would say Weyauwega Chain of Lakes would be a good example. They've been working with another consultant for 10 to 15 years. And over that time period, really didn't know where they were. They had been treating every year, but not really making any progress. When we came on board, which was just, I think, 3 or 4 years ago, 4 years at the most, I think it was 3 years ago, I have to look back, and I can get you references there as well. But first thing we did was we went out and did good mapping. We had good solid data. And then we said, here's what we want to do. My approach is going very aggressive on the front end, and then really limited management on the back end. So we did that, and they went from almost 100 acres of Eurasian water milfoil in the entire chain to now they've been down to less than 10 acres for the last 2 years.
And then they're that's small enough to be able to manage it, whatever that
Yeah,
is.
actually, my recommendation to them last year was not to do anything, no management. They went to their district membership, and the district membership said, no, we want to manage. And they're the client, so they dictate, but that was my recommendation to the Weyauwega Chain of Lakes.
What do you think it cost to manage something like Weyauwega yearly, if we can get it to that
Well,
point where
your first couple of years are gonna be really expensive, so that's why a grant is very important. I just ran some rough numbers. You're looking at the first 2 to 3 years, about $20,000 to $25,000 a year for the first 2 to 3 years. Then after that, I expect a substantial decrease in that dollar amount.
Are you guys thinking of another drain down? or-
I am not, because with the curly pond weed, it's a different animal. It needs to be treated with herbicides. There's no biological controls or any sort of natural manipulation of the environment that we can use for that. So, and again, it's a product that comes from a seed bank, so what happens, even though, let's say the initial year we go in there and get good control, that following year, we are gonna get some regrowth from that seed stock that's in the sediment. And I just know that. I would not be truthful if I would tell you we can take control of this in 1 year. It's gonna be a 2 to 3 year process, so. And it's going to be costly on the front end. I don't wanna give you any unreal expectations as to what the costs potentially are with this, and what the time commitment is. You're looking at about a 3-year commitment.
What have you
20 to
seen with,
25,000.
if any communities to where you're starting a management, and I know that Jim had made reference last time about boaters, fishermen, motors, which, has anyone been able to, well, it's public water,
Mhm.
but, you can't just, keep people off, but what have people done? Is there any way to minimize going back downhill? I mean, what can,
Well,
cite any examples of what lakes?
I don't work that closely with my districts as far as enacting rules or municipalities, but I know some districts, because we went out there, and if they have an emergency situation, they buoy off areas and called us to come out there and take a look at it before. So I'm guessing, you know, what they're doing is legal and within their bylaws or the laws they've established within the district. I know that districts have that ability, but, you know, that would be a question for an attorney and how they do that, or a warden, you know, I guess. Because a lot of times when I go to a district meeting, there may be a warden there if they're looking at enacting like a slow no wake ordinance or something like that during certain hours.
Well, Lake Poygan has got signs all over in the cane beds where you can't enter. Because that's for spawning habitat and everything else, besides being a shallow area, you're just gonna be disturbing the whole thing, you know. But they have actual signs though.
I mean, it would be great if you could just say the lake shut down for so many years till it gets, but is that realistic to any extent? And it's a reservoir, not
Well,
a natural lake.
Yeah, and
That's impossible.
you know, the reality is, even like, let's say, just for conversation's sake, you'd enact a slow no wake ordinance. You know, propellers are still going through those same aquatic plants and still cutting them up, and you know, you're trying to avoid that. So, you know, probably cut to a lesser extent than a boat going, you know, 60 miles an hour, but still, you know, it's an aquatic plant that's being cut. So I don't think that's a solution to your problem. You know, maybe within a very limited area. Again, where I've seen it is a lake district calls us and they think they have a pioneer infestation of something, or they're not sure what it is. And they'll go out there and buoy it up and say, get out here and take a look at it, or call DNR. They'll call us or DNR, go out there and take a look at it. And you know, that's where I've seen it enacted. It is pioneer infestations of AIS, and they just want to isolate that. They want to, you know, go in rapid response type thing and really get control of it before it gets out of control. That's where I've seen it enacted.
So you wouldn't know anything, is there's no way to petition the state or anything to just say limit to canoes or paddles, you know, that kind of a thing for so many years? There's no avenue like that to where you can?
Well, Johnson did say to me about putting up signs in highly fragile areas.
Like right at the, I mean,
Like where the spawning areas are, up closer to the island and that, you know, put little tags, put little signs out there to respect.
see, and you'd said something about signs that were being ignored, but I went and looked around after that, I didn't see any signs.
We
Where
had
were
signs,
those? Or
we
are
had
they?
signs up at the landing.
Yeah, I didn't see any.
Well, we had them there, and then I was forced to take them down because I didn't take out a $15 sign permit.
What
And
did
I
it
had
say?
And I had it too close to the curb.
What did it
The
say?
curbing.
The,
About cleaning your boats after, you know, you get out. No plowed oval tracks. No boats running through the weeds. The bow fishermen, 3 o'clock in the morning, ripping through that thing all night long. And the third thing was, recall the third thing, Bob?
Size limit,
Oh, and a fish size limit, yeah, no size limit, a pride limit on the fish. Because according to Johnson, or Al Niebuhr, it would take 3 years, you bring it up to the Congress, and then they vote on it, and then it takes another year after that before you can get it in effect in the rules, as far as the DNR goes. So I could not impose a size limit. All I could do is say, hey, let's, you know, because I got a lot of fish out there now. I just put another 2,500 perch out there, 5-6 inches long. I'm putting another 2,500 crappies in November. We got 51,000 northern pike out there and 6,250 bass. Okay, and these northerns are getting big now. We're starting to get there. I didn't want everybody to hear about it right now offhand, because we'll have every Tom, Dick, and Harry out there catching all these little snakes, and they don't know how to release them properly. So we're gonna have a lot of die-off that way, you know. But within the following year, like they did at Marion, the DNR said after the 3rd year, those fish are 26 inches long now in Marion, the northerns that they planted. And the perch is fantastic in there. But the weeds are a problem.
Bruce, you'll remember we had the meeting with the DNR, and this section of the meeting is not for debate at all, but it,
Actually, I
the
was on there
signs
on that
didn't.
one.
Okay, well, we recorded it, so we got a copy of it, but the DNR looked at the rules too and said that you can't unilaterally enforce them without getting on board with the town too, because the lake's in the town and the city.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
So that was another piece to add on,
That's right.
what Mr. Stoll had mentioned too.
It was a town thing.
Do you by chance work with Clintonville and their weed problem with the Pigeon River?
Oh,
Were they-
Pigeon Lake District?
Yeah, exactly.
They just hired us this spring to do the revised lake management plan, but
Okay.
they're a brand new client, I haven't worked with them
Do you have any
previously.
background on that scenario? Because I'm from there.
The only background I have is they have a lot of sediment issues as well,
Yeah.
and,
But the processing of those weeds, I mean, that has been a successful program for them by giving them away to farmers who throw them out onto
Yeah.
their fields, you know, they take them down. I think that chopper goes 4 feet deep.
yeah, they have a weed harvester
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
The cost of that, Scott, is $144,000 for a weed cutter.
well,
And all you're doing is like using a lawnmower in a hayfield. You're cutting the top of them, and the root system is still down there, it's getting bigger. You know, I mean, you can control them that way, yeah, but if you wanna spend $144,000 on a weed cutter.
I think they answered that question when they went to that weed cutter. They've been doing it a good number of years because the vastness of that body of water was very hard to treat
Okay.
chemically
Right.
as well. So I don't know, I'm just throwing it
Yeah,
out there.
no,
but I
well-
know that's what they do, I don't know if it's right, wrong, or
yeah,
indifferent.
interestingly, in their lake management plan, that's one thing they want us to look at is a comparison on cost-benefit analysis. Actually, Montello would be a great example that's very similar to this lake that we worked with this last year. They did a partial drawdown, 4-foot drawdown. We did a fall treatment this last year for the area that wasn't, the original water mill field wasn't exposed to freezing. We just did their survey, it was phenomenally successful. They only run their harvester, prior to that, they were running 2 harvesters almost nonstop. 320 per reservoir. This year, they've only run their harvesters less than 40 hours in total.
Is that a thing that is transported easily, and could they rent it out to people like us?
The harvester? They're not transported easily. There are commercial firms that do it.
It's like a combine on floats.
Yeah.
Scott, we did have one, you know. in
No,
the
I did
80s.
not know that.
Yes, we had
Got it on
one.
my computer.
We had one, and it was hard to get the guys after a while to run the thing, because it's all volunteer once again, okay? And then the farmer that was taking the weeds, he passed away. So now we're sitting with all these weeds, and we can't get rid of them. So what they did is they turned around and they sold a harvester to White Lake. White Lake has got our machine, our old machine. That came from here, that was Lake Weyauwega.
And I think we're getting off track. I mean, these are management options that you can look up, regardless of the management option, whether you're harvesting, treatment, or drawdown. I mean, the drawdown, there's a cost because you have lost revenue because of hydroelectric generation. The reality is for the lake to function, whether it's enacting any type of an ordinance, if there's a district in place, they can do that. If they need to raise money to match a grant or something like that, they have the ability to do that once the district's in place. The district can transcend municipal boundaries, meaning it can cover a city, a village, a township, or even county boundaries, because I have numerous clients that cover multiple counties or townships, even incorporate a village or city. So that really, from a functionality standpoint, I think whether it's enacting a specific rule or regulation, or just generating funds in order to, do long-range planning. If you're a district, you know you're gonna have the ability to do these projects over a long period of time. Protecting the investment of the people that live on the waterway.
Okay. Any other questions for
Thank you.
Mr. Curtis?
Would you have any, Mike?
Nothing right now. We'll move on. We also have it scheduled at 7A in new business. So then we can discuss more at new business. Any more citizens appearance? Okay. Then we'll move on to our committee reports. Finance Committee?
On behalf of the Finance Committee, I would like to make a motion for approval of the 2015 budget calendar.
I'll second it.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded to recommend the approval of our 2015 budget calendar. Any questions or comments?
Just a quick comment, it's pretty self-explanatory, but essentially the departments will be formulating their budgets through the end of September. When the committee meetings meet the first and second and third week of October, that's when those committees will get to the budget. Pretty much the same as last year. Early October, you saw the budget as a committee, each committee. In mid-October, the full council had a preliminary review. We came back to it in early November at the committee level, and then the third Monday in November, you adopted the budget, set your tax rate. So you pretty much everything that was in the budget, we went over 2, 3, 4 times. There weren't any surprises at all when we got to the end, but we're looking at following that schedule. So you'll start to see it. Now, some of the committees, we've talked a little bit about it, but in October, the formal review will kick off.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
On behalf of the Finance Committee, I would like to make a motion to approve checks number 30743 through 30821, totaling $130,457.29 in the monthly financial statements.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the checks. 3,743 to 3,821, totaling $130,457.29 in monthly financial statements. Any questions or comments on any of the bills? I'll ask for a roll call.
Gunderson,
Aye.
Brunner,
Aye.
Sandro,
Aye.
Appleby,
Aye.
Edwards,
Aye.
Rasmussen.
Aye.
Motion carried with 6 ayes.
Thank you. Anything else from Finance Committee?
There's nothing else from Finance Committee, thank you.
Thank you. Public Works Committee.
All right, I'd like to make a motion for approval with 12-month John Deere tractor lease for 2015.
I'll second that motion.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the 12-month John Deere tractor lease. And that is with who?
John Deere?
John Deere.
John Deere itself?
Yep.
Okay. All right, for 2015, any other questions or comments?
Just a quick comment, it's the same program we participated in 2014. Again, it's with John Deere. We did have 3 quotes last year when we got into the program. We had called and the quotes were the same for this year, or going into 2015. The reason why John Deere is cheaper, and when I say cheaper, we are leasing a $130,000 brand new John Deere tractor, and it costs us about $8,000 for the year. And you get a brand new tractor that's maintained by Reister and Schnell in Hortonville. They participate, we're actually piggybacking off of, and I want to say it's Jefferson County. They have, and I'm, now that we tape this, now I'll be quoted and that'll be wrong, but it's a state contract with John Deere. That county gets all of their equipment on lease with John Deere, and so every year they roll over their equipment. They always have something brand new. It's always under warranty. John Deere has reached out to me about some of our other equipment. There's not enough information on that for what we all need, but we do know that with this John Deere tractor, we did buy the plow blade last year. We did do some snow removal on it. It worked pretty good. The big heavy lifting item that we have is in the yard waste site, in the composting site. So out of the $8,500 that this tractor will cost us for the year, $5,700 gets charged to the yard waste site, composting activities, $2,800 for snow removal. So for $2,800, essentially, you've got your own piece of equipment that we can send out at any time. It's not going to get all the streets, it's not going to clean downtown, but it's something for $2,800. So the recommendation would be to participate in that lease for 1 more year.
Okay, thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. Any other questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Carried.
I have nothing else for council.
Okay, thank you. Police, Fire, and Ambulance Committee.
Our committee brings forth a recommend approval of dissolving the City of Weyauwega's Police Commission. Do you want me to go into more of that, or?
I would need a motion for that.
I'll second that.
Did you,
You want to make a motion?
did you put yours into a motion?
I will, I will make a motion to recommend the approval of dissolving the City of Weyauwega Police Commission.
Okay. Now, a second.
I will second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the dissolving of the City of Weyauwega Police Commission. Any questions or comments?
Why?
I can throw a quick comment in, and then Attorney Kelly is here too. He had come to the police committee meeting last Thursday, and you have in your packet the 10-page opinion that Davis and Qthow had put together as of last April. Basically, because by state law, we're under 4,000 in population, we have the option of having a police commission or not. And if you don't have a police commission, and this motion would pass tonight, you'll have follow-up. You'll probably want to have a follow-up motion, and Mr. Attorney Kelly can fill you in on that. Basically, then you have to decide who's going to do the hiring for the police department, the discipline. I'm trying to think of the third one there. By
Discipline
state
and
law.
hiring, basically.
That's about it. Now, the way we've had it set up is we've had a police commission, but when you decide to have a police commission, you have to give the police commission all of the authorities that they're entitled to by state law, and we haven't. We kind of gave them the ability to do discipline, but then their rules set it up that the police committee, which is the council, would then be doing the hiring, and that doesn't jive. Either you have to go all the way in on a police commission or not. So this recommendation is, because we have the choice, dissolve the police commission as it exists now, and then if that passes, then the follow-up motion would be, how are you going to handle those duties then? And Attorney Kelly, I don't mean to steal your thunder, but if you'd
No,
like to add
actually-
anything on that?
Actually, you did a pretty good job of explaining it. You gotta choose all or nothing. Either you're gonna have a police and fire commission, and they're gonna be able to hire and fire, and they're gonna be able to do all the discipline. And the council is supposed to stay removed from that. The idea is, if you have a police and fire commission, it's very independent. Now, if you don't have a police and fire commission, which is your option, because your size, what you're allowed to do then is, you as a council can oversee the hiring. You still can't oversee the firing. The statute says that you either pick a panel of 3 people or 1 person to take care of that function. So, but you have to do it that way. What's funny about this statute is it's one of statewide concern. You don't get to vary it. Either you have this police and fire commission, or you don't. And if you don't, then the council or a committee of the council can take care of the hiring. But the firing is going to have to be done by either a panel or a person. And you'll have to then change your ordinances to reflect that. And there are a couple ordinances that need to be touched up to allow that to happen if you eliminated your police and fire commission. Even if you keep your police and fire commission, there's some things in your ordinances you'd have to change. For example, we couldn't have the police committee approving the hiring process. That has to be police and fire commission if you kept the police and fire commission.
So either way you go on this, you should probably have a follow-up motion to recommend staff or the city attorney clean things up with your ordinances, and then how, if you keep the commission, clean that up. If you don't, how are we gonna handle those issues? So the one vote is what you have on the motion. The second one will be a motion to refer to the city attorney.
So either way, it's a lot of work, moderate work.
A lot of it we've already done. When we went through, and you folks asked us to look at what the problems are and if we're doing it right, automatically we're going through kind of with a checklist saying, well, this isn't right, we'll have to work on this. It's not a
So
lot of work.
keeping the police commission is not a lot of work, or dropping it is not a lot of work?
Either one's about the same, because if we keep the commission, that's already, I kind of outlined that in that report. There's quite a few little changes we have to make. If we determine to get rid of the commission, there's going to have to be some changes in the ordinance addressing the police committee, police, fire, and ambulance committee.
Seems there's a lot more people having to be involved in less continuity if you have someone hiring, someone firing, someone making decisions. Just a thought, what do you think about that? Is that true?
That's legitimate, like
It's
your
just
discussion
anything-
was.
Like anything with any kind of, when everything's farmed out in one company, it's hard to keep control. As a contractor, it's easier if I'm doing more of it and keeping control instead of the next guy not knowing what the next guy did and care about it. And I mean, continuity wise, I would think it's,
For continuity, the council has been doing the hiring already. So when you had the police chief, the sergeant, the council did the hiring there. So if you keep the police commission, in theory, if you had a police commission that worked, you would be keeping continuity. But in this case, if you vote to keep the police commission, you're breaking from what you've been doing for as long as I've been here, which has not been, it's been kind of a blip on the history of the city here, but, if you had the commission running the way it's supposed to be, it shouldn't be too much. But with the 10-page legal opinion that they had given to you back in April, the very last page has a conclusion that basically lays out the question, do you want one or not? And the other 9 pages are basically, if you want one, line by line, let's change your ordinance, let's change all your rules. So either way, you've got probably a lot of heavy lifting. Now, if you keep the commission, you already sort of have the manual on this is what you need to change. But I would imagine that Attorney Kelly and Attorney Macy sort of already know which way to go either way.
Yeah, it's not that bad. We would have to create an ordinance. This is probably the first step in some others you're gonna probably wanna do as time goes on. Right now, you have an ordinance that creates your police committee. It doesn't really say much about what it does,
Or any of the committees.
or any of the committees.
Right.
Eventually, you wanna flush that out, so it's a little clearer what they're supposed to do. That's basically what we would do. We would say they're involved in the hire and fire if we were gonna get rid of the police and fire commission. And also the oversight that you folks do with the budget oversight and all that kind of stuff. We'd work that into the ordinance. Those would be the principal duties in regard to police. That's all that would have to be drafted really at this point in time, because the police and fire commission rules are the things, in my opinion, that needed a lot of change, because there are a lot of things in their rules that were wrong. But again, I have those all written out, what we'd have to change, so most of the lifting's done on that. And from my standpoint, either way works. You know, I'm not really in a position to say this is the best way. That your point on it all being centralized in the PFC makes a lot of sense. You know, the response to that might be we've hired, we know how to do it, we do it well, and using one person to do discipline and discharge if that ever comes up, pretty convenient. So, you know, there are
I just think of
Both
government,
sides.
how you got the CIA and the FBI, and they're always fighting, well, who knows what. You know, all these intelligent people in a room by themselves, well, whatever, you know what I'm
It
saying?
would be nice to have a commission that worked according to the state statutes, but the reality of it is, we have a hard time filling the boards that we're required to have, much less filling ones that we don't exactly need. Just the meeting last week, only 2 members of that commission could make it. We couldn't have had a meeting. I just don't see it. As much as I wish we had it, and running professionally, I think I'd like to see us eventually get back there. Right now, I just don't think it's an option.
And that's the other thing, is like, it's not like this is like from here till kingdom come, this is the answer forever. And like,
We can
as
switch it
Attorney
back, like you
Conley
were saying the
said
other night. yeah.
last week, it can be changed at any point going forward. We need to make a decision though, one way or the other.
yeah, we should straighten it up.
Right.
You definitely should.
That's why I second that motion to clarify that, is my vision, I believe the best vision going forward for all of us is to someday hand that off, but in the meantime, we have to set process and procedure, because right now, I think it runs astray, and I think we need to redefine what protocol is for that commission, and then hand it off at some later date. In no means do I mean that we do not have a police and fire commission, but I think we need to take responsibility to tweak that so that it works.
Any other questions or comments? Motion on the floor and seconded to approve the approval of dissolving the City of Weyauwega Police Commission. Any other comments? Questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
That action has to be taken by ordinance. So what
Right.
you've done essentially is
Yeah.
say, I got a draft one for you to pass.
I was just gonna say, I would like to, I would like to make a motion to appoint Attorney Calney, to restructure our ordinance regarding the dissolving of the Police and Fire Commission.
I'll second that.
Okay. You heard the motion and the second. Any other comments or questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay. Anything else?
I don't believe we have anything else for council,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Public health and relief.
No action for council.
Thank you. Recreation.
No action for council.
Thank you. Public property and purchase.
No action for council.
All right. And planning commission, no action. All right, move on to number 7, new business. The Weyauwega Lake restoration requests for city support of Lake District creation.
I'll turn it over to Attorney Kelly, and you do have a memo that he's drafted, and he'll review that too. Obviously, as we learned earlier, throughout the whole year, the Weyauwega Lake Restoration has identified some problems with the lake, and they've been working to try to resolve them. They did make a request to the city to support the creation of a lake district, which we talked about a little bit before. Basically, Attorney Kelly can weigh in on what are your options, because the lake or the mill pond reservoir, the body of water is in the city and in the town. So it's not as straightforward as the city jumping on and saying this is what we'll do. But Attorney Kelly can give you an idea on your options.
Yeah, and again, Pat, you kind of zeroed in on the main issue. And the creation of a lake district's governed by a portion of Chapter 33 of the statutes. And one of the things it talks about is how you form the district. And it's normally done by a petition of a bunch of interested people, normally the people that live on the lake. In fact, the petition has to be signed by 51% of the riparian owners, either of property or that number that are riparian, before it can even be acted on. We might be a little ahead of ourselves on this one because we're running into kind of the same problem we had with the DNR. And that's that this lake is not just in the city's jurisdiction. If it were, the city would be in a position to create a lake district if it so chose. Since there are 2 jurisdictions involved, it goes to the county. The county is the one that would have to consider the petition. And again, normally the first step in creating a district is defining it, saying here are all the people that are interested. And you're going to have some people in the town as well as some people in the city. Then you put that group together, and in this case, it's going to involve the city because we have property on the lake. So we would be one of the people that might be involved in the petition. Then that petition, you probably are going to want to get our approval because we're a pretty big player. But then it would go forward to the county board. Right now, we're missing that first step. We don't have a petition signed by 51% of the owners of property or 51% of the owners. We're going to need that. And once you have your district together and it's approved of by the county, then you do have some modest regulatory powers that tie to restoration. You're also in a little better position to apply for grants and so forth. But right now, we're a little ahead of ourselves on that regard. As far as your options are concerned right now, since we're not actually looking at a petition, we're not really in position to say we're gonna participate in the petition. There's a couple things you could do. You could say to the district, put something together and get back to us. You could ask staff to assist a little bit with that, because I get the impression that there's not an attorney living on the flowage right now that you guys can tap and try to get some information from, and we have at least a little information put together that might be helpful for you, and a couple resources that we could point you to. But as it sits right now, this body's really not in a position to approve of going forward with the district, because we don't know what the district looks like. If we like the idea, we could encourage some development or even direct some staff to it. But those would be the extent of your authority at this point.
Well, the only thing that we're lacking is a petition, like you said. You have
And
the
a
names.
description of what's gonna be
We have a
encompassed.
description. As a matter of fact, I gave Patrick a map of that quite some time ago. We've had 3 options. We had a 1,000-foot radius around the lake, a 1,200-foot radius around the lake, and I forget what the heck the third one was, maybe it was 1,600. I don't know, which encompassed a lot of property, okay? We decided on the 1,200, or the 1,000-foot radius around the lake, okay? We got all their names, addresses, and everything. I got them from Ian at the county level. I got their names, addresses, everything. The only thing we haven't done now is put the petition into motion, okay?
Okay.
My reason for coming here was with your blessings,
Oh, you
We
wanna
wanna know-
gauge the feeling?
so I can start this thing into motion. Can we start this tomorrow? I've got the names. I can show Patrick the maps tomorrow. He does have a couple of copies of them.
Yeah, the one thing, and Attorney Jim, there were a couple of topics that you mentioned about the city being able to give a blessing on city lands being included.
Right.
So the city,
We
in
would
some
be part of
aspect
the
has,
owners.
but can the city then also unilaterally say that city land cannot be included in a lake district?
Well, what we,
You know, before, I
Just
guess
like
it's kind of a
any-
cart before the horse either way, but, you know,
Yeah.
they could go around and get the petition, but if the city council would say no, you know, unilaterally just sign or vote no for every homeowner, they could do that, they could
Yes.
vote yes and sign it for every homeowner, which
Yeah.
either one of those would probably,
within the city,
yeah, and either one of those would probably then make any actual property owner, whatever they wanna do, moot, I would think. If the council would say, as your representatives, yes, we sign it for you, no, we don't. Is that something that would make sense before the petition gets started, or?
normally you see the petition to see what the interest is.
Sure.
And also, there's different ways you can form that petition. I mean, business people, for example, might have a little bit more interest in the development of the lake. Certain businesses, you might want to include them. They might not be within that circumference. There are a couple different ways you can look at putting it together. If the council is completely against this idea, and you know that right now, might be a good, fair thing to let the people know. But again, you're a little ahead of yourself. Normally, you're looking at a petition saying, we have a lot of interest from our riparian property owners, and then you kind of gauge it from there. Well, we're not quite there yet.
So then what you're saying is he should try to get the feelings, he's ready to go to try to see, he should
Well-
do that and come back?
Well, we're not really sure, are these people ready to sign up? They realize they can be
We haven't
taxed?
contacted them at all. I just got the names and addresses and phone numbers from the county that included that 1,000-foot radius around the
Okay.
lake, which included the town and the city, village. Everybody was together on it, you know. Goes back 1,000 feet up to almost the county, where the old county grounds was.
Mhm.
Makes a circle around the lake that way for 1,000 feet.
Have we gauged the reaction of the town yet?
Not at all. Like I said, this is the baby step again. I'm waiting for a response from you guys. I don't want to have to be running around for a week collecting signatures and then all of a sudden have you guys veto it. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
essentially say, we won't support it.
Right.
And therefore withhold all our signatures.
Yeah,
It's
we're
gonna make
banging our
it.
head up against the wall for a long time now. We're all getting tired.
What's the negative or positive of, as far as the city concerns, is there a negative that affects the city if this happens, if the Lake District happens? Lake District happens, what's the negative ramifications to the city, if any?
If the Lake District happens and we're a portion of the Lake District, Lake Districts can tax for some of these improvements, for some of those costs. So we may ultimately be paying to the district for some of those costs. Now, they're very limited, understand, the authority of a Lake District goes to restoration. So, you know, it's a special purpose type tax, but that's a potential issue, that you'd have that cost out there. And right now, you don't know what that cost is.
Well, right now we do. We're talking probably $25,000. Divided up over a 1,000-foot radius.
For many years going forward is what.
3 years, probably.
Probably.
And we might be able,
Probably.
we don't know how
Maybe
much.
If you wanted cleaning your backyard, we would have to have continual maintenance. Sure, we'd have to monitor it, but it sure the heck ain't gonna cost $25,000 a year. You know, we've been doing wonders on a few thousand that I've been raising on raffle money. It would cost nowhere near that.
Well, how would that work though? Would that, you get your county tax bill. Would that be on a county tax bill?
It would show up as
Yeah.
a separate, so right now you got the city, Weyauwega Fremont Schools, Fox Valley Tech, the county, and the state. This would be one more for the property owners that are within the 1,000 foot.
One, in other words, not everybody would.
No, not everybody would.
Right.
You don't live 1,000 feet within.
So it's really
Okay.
up to the people in district whether they want it or not.
Usually
Yeah.
that's the best
I mean,
way.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, I
And
see
we are
nothing wrong
people
with
of the
them go out-
district.
Right.
Yeah, we're
Letting
actually
them
people in the district.
Go around, get signatures if they can get them and see what happens.
See, they're really, you have kind of three options when you have the petition in front of you, if it was already here. That would be vote to just include all of your lands in the district. And then you're saying, yeah, we'll agree to be part of the district. Might be wind up getting taxed somewhere down the line for those assessments to improve the lake. You could vote to give permission for part of your territory to be in the district, if you wanted to do that, for whatever reason. And in that case, you know, they'd have to go out and get enough landowners to get up to the 51%, or you could vote not to be involved at all, your property not involved at all. Now, I don't know what our percentage is of the lake. I didn't look at the map today.
On the land alone, now I don't have the exact number, but it really depends on where they cut off on the western edge, what's river, and I don't know what to call it on an educated opinion, but the river really sort of disperses into the lake, so it depends on what
It'd be
what
like
that
where
is.
Linden Point is right behind you guys, by Mill Pond Estates. That's
Oh,
what
yeah.
I'm looking at, the diagonal line.
Okay.
And my aunt next door to me is the last house in the city, so it runs on a diagonal, right? straight.
Well, but we're talking about land
Right.
around the lake, not the water itself, the land that's on the water. So, yeah, I mean, it's probably more than half, I think, for
It's-
sure.
It's well over
It's,
half.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's all the more reason why you
Right.
need to know. I see.
So there are a couple of things, once you gather the petition, I don't know if we want to go into that, but, you know, that speaks more in state law on what has to be done. Once the petition gets filed with the county clerk, so once you have the 51%, there's a certain set of time, 30 days later, there's a public hearing by the county committee that handles this. So I guess the question I've got is, once the petition is signed, sealed, and delivered, that starts the clock with the county, but the city doesn't move that fast in meetings, so there's probably a point where the petition gets plugged into review by the city council before it's filed, or when all the signatures are handled.
It's usually up to the
But not-
petitioners, and that's usually a good idea to get the approval of the city before it's filed.
Sure.
Now, if we take the whole lake, what percentage is village?
Or town.
Excuse me, town, I keep wanting to say village.
Really pulling it off the wall and out of the air,
Yeah.
35 to 40% maybe?
Okay, and the rest is private owners. Okay.
Oh, you're saying the city, how much does the city own of that?
Right.
The city's in.
Oh, it's not, I don't think it's that high, because the parkland, some of that parkland we lease.
Would the high school fall in that category, downstream?
I don't know, Well, it depends on where the point,
Where
you're
the
measuring
territory
1,000
is.
feet, you know.
Well, that would be a
If it's
thousand.
at the dam,
that would
1,000
be a
feet from the
1,000
dam?
feet. Oh, yeah, that would be included in that.
But the city doesn't own that, though, the school district owns all that land. So that would be a separate property owner too then?
I guess it wouldn't be city property at all then, it would.
No.
Not the schools,
then it
because
would be
they're,
immaterial, and I suppose.
yeah, I mean, that would be just another state property owner,
Mhm.
Right, within the city though.
yeah, yep.
Who would rule on that then? The county would be the boss, right?
On that piece of land?
Yeah.
The school district itself, the school
district
board,
itself?
yeah, the school board would.
Yeah, they would
If
be one
they're
of the
included there.
signatories. They'd be like for purposes of this, think of the city as one of the people living on the lake.
Okay,
And think of the school district in the same manner. They'd all have the right to participate or not.
right, okay.
They would only, the land affected would only be in that radius,
1,000 feet.
foot, not,
Well,
right?
there's three
I
radius.
mean, it would not get into the school property that
No.
much, I wouldn't think, is what
No.
I'm saying. So they're, if they tax, they would only be on the,
Okay, that's the second time you mentioned 3 radiuses. First of all, you said you're gonna go 1,000 feet.
Well, we
Is
got
that
three,
what
we
you're
got
looking
three
at?
options on the table. I had 3 maps, and I gave them to Patrick.
And I'm asking,
That's
which one are you looking for?
we said the thousand.
He said the
easy-
1,000. Which one are you
The
looking
easiest way
for?
would, the goal would be the 1,000 feet. That would
So if
encompass
you don't-
everybody around the shoreline, riparian owners.
So, the opinion, the feeling I'm getting right now is that if you don't get 51% of 1,000, then you're gonna jump it up and try and go a bigger
Whatever it takes,
radius.
I'm gonna try to get a district, yeah.
Okay.
Bob,
Just to clarify, the 1,000 feet outside the city limits, there's a shoreline zoning ordinance from the ordinary high water mark, and that's why we picked that number, because there's specific rules for land use on that,
Mhm.
from the ordinary high water mark, and we're looking at the town in that respect.
Okay. Very good.
Jim, may I ask you why you would consider any properties below the dam as part of that lake district?
Well, it would be within the 1,000 feet. You know, that's what Ian drew up from the county originally. And he included the high school with it. It wasn't my idea. He was just going on that as a rule of thumb for things that he's done before. Right now, Alpaca's forming another lake district. What's his name is working on it by the chain of lakes, our old attorney, Worth. He's working on a lake district over there now for his brother-in-law. Stratton Lake, is forming one right now. It was just something Ian grew up. It was just some guideline. We had to have a starting point.
Yeah.
I don't know that you want to drag out too much, but I guess, this might be a good point where, as a potential landowner that would be faced with the petition, well, what kind of questions as a landowner are you gonna ask? Probably tax rate, how much is the tax gonna be? Are you gonna levy a tax? What types of rules? I think we kind of have an idea on rules for the lake, but if it's supposed to be limited to restoration, how much of that could you enforce? And that might be something the DNR might be able to tell you too, because if you're
Rest-
impacting fishing and that type of thing, or speeds or whatever,
Well, they were all
Lake
for the
protection.
formation. The DNR is right behind us on this. Because
But whether you can
they know
enforce
the
those
importance
rules,
of
though,
the
too.
grants and everything,
oh yeah, yep.
so. But if this becomes a lake district, okay, it would be out of our hands as an association. It would be you guys as a governing body to come up with your own rules.
Or it would be the governing body of the Lake District.
Right.
And you would have
Yes, sir, yes.
representation, yeah.
And you would have to appoint 2 commissioners,
The people
okay?
in the
all for
district would have to.
The association, along with your board here, okay? Whoever you choose, we'd have to have 2 commissioners, okay? On our side, as the public,
Okay,
okay, to be representing the public. Doesn't have to be me and Bob, it could be anybody else, you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And then you go from there. You got 2 commissioners, and then we can get the grant monies. I mean, otherwise our hands are tied, we can't do nothing. We're up against a stone wall here.
As possible petitioners, I would hope we wouldn't sign the petition or deny the petition until the public had a chance, because I wouldn't want to sway saying, oh, the city's for this or the city's against it before everybody had a chance.
Well, us being representatives of our wards, we owe it to them to be petitioned without influence.
Right,
And then respond accordingly to the results of that survey.
right.
Right.
I wouldn't want to.
Definitely.
I think that everybody who's involved, the citizens of this city, ought to have a right to fill out, yes, they want it, or no, they don't want it. That's their right, and I don't feel right about saying, well, I'm gonna vote for you, and this is where it's gonna be. That's not my job. This is, you know, that's the flag. There's no swastika and there's no sickle and hammer. And I just feel that it's their right to decide for themselves what they want.
Yeah, I would say the same thing, that the only thing I can say is I'd rather have you go get the 51% first
Right.
and then come to us
Well,
with it.
that's what I was waiting for. This is
I
what I wanted to
don't,
hear.
I don't think,
Could I have a help
We
with
can-
addressing the letter though from the attorney on how my verbiage, how I could present this to the people in a friendly forum? Because the first question that comes up, you know, is gonna be taxes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's number one, that's the only negative thing. Nothing else negative could come out of this, because it'll be for the better of the community. We'll have a clean lake, pristine waters, no weeds, good fishing. Maybe you can help revitalize downtown area here again.
Our big thing, and not to jump in, but I have to jump in a little bit. Usually the council would have to decide whether or not to offer up the services of the
Oh,
attorney,
okay.
because the minute
Sure.
he gets targeted in or locked in on something, the bill starts running.
Sure.
Oh,
And who's gonna pay the
There-
bill?
there's
You know,
that.
and that's-
taxes again, eh?
He's a very nice guy, but,
Taxes again.
yeah.
Well, and the other thing
So-
is, there's a little bit of an ethics issue because you
Right.
guys are gonna be members.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm in a kind of funny position as to how I
Sure,
advise
sure,
you.
I
I
understand.
was thinking the same thing, that it's almost like we're endorsing it.
and I guess the other question that I would have is, who's gonna enforce it?
You are. You're gonna be the governing body, sir.
No, I mean, who's gonna enforce that, you said before, that 3 o'clock oval racing on the lake and, or putting the oval out
Well, that's
there?
up to you guys to accept those rules. If you don't want them in there, don't put them in there. I'm here primarily for Grant, to get rid of the weeds. Okay? That's my primary objective right now.
But we're not going to be, we won't be the governing body of the Lake District though.
Yes, you will.
We'll just be one member of
We
it.
will
Yeah,
be,
we'll be
we
one
will be
member.
a
We
voice
set-
in
We'll
that,
be a
in
voice.
that group,
Each have
but
an
we won't
individual,
have
yeah.
majority control over
No,
that.
not the majority.
So we're
It'll
just a
be-
voice in that.
You'll have to
Right.
take it to a
And those
vote.
be
It'll be,
questions.
it'll be
Yeah.
just like us in our
Democrat.
Right now,
fire,
your council-
fire and
Right.
ambulance
The
district.
council
We
could
have,
be the body.
we have 2 people that represent that and go to the meetings.
And more than likely, we have two considerations, not only for the Lake District that we'll base our decision on, but our constituents that we represent in our various wards as well.
Right.
So keep
Well,
that in mind.
I think once they get the survey, Scott, I think we would, once they get that
That'd be
survey
a good
and do that,
indication, wouldn't it?
they
Yep.
will be telling us
Right.
what their feelings are.
Yeah.
I agree.
So if the idea is the council endorses the idea to go out and get a petition, is that good enough for you then to get going
That's
on?
good enough for me.
Okay, so at this point, and then the idea then would be at some point it'll come back to the council then?
Right.
That's what you're asking for here too?
Right.
And you gotta realize at that point in time, the council will decide whether it wants to also be in the petition.
Right.
So I'm not sure the council's promising that right now. I don't know that you've talked
Right.
over the pros and cons enough.
But to be fair to the Lake District, in its fledgling state here and wanting to get this going, they need some direction. That's probably the best thing they can start doing at this point in time. Correct?
Tell us exactly what it is you envision as a district.
Right.
And let us see if we agree with it, and then get enough people show that there's a momentum, that there's people that would be interested in being part of a taxable district. Sometimes that stops it. A lot of times it doesn't.
Do you have something drafted out? I mean, the petition or out?
No, nothing.
So that's where you were saying,
Yeah,
we
I
should
need
have
some help with that.
Well, and-
Because I wanna be friendly and I wanna be to the point though, you know. I wanna make sure I'm within my ramifications of the law and everything and how I'm stating this.
Here, Jim, and I can email this to you too, but there's 5 key things to a petition.
Okay.
One is, what is the name of the district gonna be? And I'll email this to you, so I'm just running through it for the record, but
Okay.
2 is the necessity for the district, so why a district? Number 3 then is, and this is where we're talking about how do you word it, a statement that the public health, comfort, convenience, necessity, or public welfare will be promoted by the establishment of the district, and the lands to be included therein will be benefited by such establishment for the boundaries of the territory to be included in the proposed district. So, that might be your statement there already, you may already have it. Number 4 then is a plat or a sketch indicating the approximate area and boundaries of the district, if you already have. Number 5 then is the petition shall be verified by one of the petitioners.
Well, it's Mike Guire, the guy that I had here last time.
Yep.
Retired cop. He told me I could copy his bylaws because those have already been approved by the DNR and everybody else, so he can give me an idea.
So like an example on what it'll be.
He'd have the petition too, I'm sure.
Right.
Do not have references for potential supporters, say from lake districts that have had success, you know what I mean, like, just.
We did
any
last
reference
month.
for- Like say, hey, we were against that person. Is there any way you could refer to other lake districts for the people you're petitioning?
Oh,
For
absolutely.
reference and say,
Yep.
you know, you may be skeptical, but here's the reality of it and
Right,
something like that.
The other thing too, Jim, is the presentation we had last month,
right.
we taped it and we put it online, so it's on YouTube already, so I mean, you could direct people to go watch that too, and to watch this too if you want.
Oh, great, okay. Very good.
At the same time, Jim, are you gonna be sending the surveys to the town?
Yeah, they're within the radius, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. There ain't a lot of concern there, though. There ain't a lot of property there.
Okay.
There's just a few, you know.
The parcels are bigger.
Right. Yeah.
Do you wanna make a motion or a recommendation on where we're at with this right now?
Is it necessary?
There's nothing that we're really.
We didn't really say anything except, go ahead, get your signatures or try
So you
to.
can do that too, I mean, you can make it as formal or informal as you want, I believe.
Sure. Sure there.
I would think informal would be better, because formal, once again, gives an impression that the city is,
If you're allowing them to go get,
I'm just,
circulate, yeah, I see where you're going.
You could receive this matter, and just place it on file for right now, pending the further information from the Lake Association, including possibly a petition for a lake district.
Essentially what you're doing is, yeah, receiving all the information here tonight, filing it officially.
Filing it and understanding that there may be a follow-up with a petition.
Can I make that motion? Motion to receive, this and file?
sure. Make a motion that we received it, placed it on file.
I will second that motion.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I have one more. I got, I'm gonna have a bill here from Mr. Stantec here. I was wondering if I could get some type of financial support for his services.
That would have to be a separate agenda item, first of all.
It's
Yeah,
not,
when we spend money, we'd have to have it on the agenda
His
that lays
AIS
out how
survey.
much.
Yeah.
What would it be roughly, Mark, about, just the ballpark or?
Both of the survey we just did,
Yeah.
I don't know, was it? Was it? I don't even
You
remember.
mean up to date, or?
What we got going here now with his AIS survey and the grid. Because the DNR's following up at the end of the month now with their survey, and he's gonna share data here with Mark. Because we're doing only part of the lake where the problem is, okay? We gotta grid the whole thing, okay? What, can you just give me a little, throw a number out there for these
It was
guys?
1350 was the estimate. survey that we just did.
$1,350.
You would have to take that to the finance committee next month when we meet.
Okay.
We don't
Might
have
be
that
on the
on,
agenda.
it's not on the agenda now, so I will just ask that be put on the agenda for finance next month.
Right. It's not a lot of money, but our reserves are really.
But if you could send something in, and you can just even email me if you'd like,
Okay,
how much money and why?
okay.
And then that we can get
What
it to the finance committee you're looking for?
Yes.
Okay. And then that way we'll have it on the agenda and they can consider it then.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay?
We didn't vote on that, did we?
Oh, we still have the motion
Yes.
to receive all the information and place it on file? We
Yep.
didn't vote on that yet.
No.
Okay, there's no more questions on that. I will ask for all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion's carried. We'll move on to 7B. Approve a street permit for the Weyauwega Area Chamber of Commerce for September 20th, 2014.
I will make a motion to approve the use of the street permit for September 20th, 2014.
I'll second that motion.
Motion's been made and seconded.
I got a lot of questions. Well, not a lot, but questions.
Questions or?
Security on this, Jerry. Security on the beer tent.
This is the street use
Oh,
permit.
my bad.
We'll be
There
there.
you are.
We'll get there in
Yeah,
next.
it's next
You're
one.
bad.
My bad.
You're bad.
This is the idea of,
Oh, that's because I'm not looking at them.
yeah.
Okay,
7B is the request to use the street for a parade. The beer tent, as you imagine, which is the next item on your agenda.
All right,
For the
fine, fine. Security.
okay, we have a motion and a seconded to approve the street permit for the Weyauwega Area Chamber of Commerce for September 20th, 2014. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next, I would need a motion then to approve a temporary Class B retailer's license for the Weyauwega Chamber of Commerce for September 20th, 2014.
I will make a motion to approve the temporary Class B retailer's license for Weyauwega Area Chamber of Commerce for September 20th, 2014.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right, we have a motion.
Isn't
And
this
a
where-
second?
Isn't this where the security?
Oh,
Is this security on?
comes in?
Let me-
Security?
So let me jump in real quick and then I'll
This is why-
forward
this
it
is why
to
we
my
opened that.
Right.
associate in the back off
But I think
camera.
you have to wait because that's when I said we have a second and a motion and a seconded. And now do we have any questions or any comments?
I'll make a quick comment, if that's okay. The comment would be, the idea of this event is a horse and buggy days event. Over the past few months, myself and the police chief have been working with Jared Wilson and with the chamber, and at points in time, both, more so with Jared, I would say. The chamber typically has run this event, and they're running the event under the umbrella of the chamber. And so that's why they're taking out the license. And because the temporary Class B licenses can only be issued to certain groups, the chamber qualifies as a group. But Jared Wilson is technically running the event. Now, there are some references to Beer, Wine, and Cheese Festival with the Horse and Buggy Days Parade. The name is yet to be determined by Thursday. I have a feeling you'll see this as just Horse and Buggy Days. Basically, the intent was to try to get beer tasting, beer sampling, wine tasting, wine sampling, cheese tasting, and tasting and sampling is the same thing, but giving out samples, selling. We had the attorneys take a look into that idea for having a full-on beer, wine, and cheese fest, whatever that all entails. It sounds like that effort on its own, regardless of whether it's legal to do it, they're not gonna be able to pull together all of, like, microbreweries and things like that. Now, I won't say they can't, but it's a month away, and I do not believe that there's anything really lined up, except for a beer tent. And so the idea for this event is, the beer tent will be in front of First National Bank, on South Mill Street. Jared Wilson is running the beer tent. He is hoping to hire the same band we had at the fireworks, Third Wheel, the young gentleman from town. He's Gonna have them play. He's also gonna bring in pool tables, have a pool tournament, a petting zoo, and a parade. So at this point, it sounds like Horse and Buggy Days is going to be a parade, like it's always been. A beer tent with a band and potentially a DJ, and then a petting zoo too. So the beer license is being taken out by the chamber. Jared Wilson is in charge. We have sent them the security agreement that you pulled together for the fair. And I do know that Jared Wilson and the police chief have been in contact about how this is going to work. I've talked to Jared a little bit too. He's got no issue saying, we told them, look, these are the rules, that you're gonna have to account for security, and this is what the security could be if you choose the police department. So, if
Now
you'd
let me
like to
get
go-
back to what I was
Yeah.
gonna ask, because of the security, is because they have not requested permission for outside consumption of alcoholic beverages. They did not check that box. That means they cannot have any beer on Main Street, that everything has to stay inside that tent.
Correct.
Correct. So, nobody's gonna walk out of any of the bars with any beer.
I'm not saying they're not going to, they shouldn't.
But this even means used to have people on the picnic tables outside of the tent.
I think if they do it, which they've done in the past, where they put that snow fence out, and that's just an extension of the tent. My big concern here was that Saturday is gonna come and all of a sudden there's different people on Main Street during the daytime.
Right.
I talked to Jared and I said, I think Patrick, you emailed him the agreement. And we said, beer tent, whatever that is. He has that fenced
Okay.
out with a little garden in front of it. There's gonna be somebody there from our department making sure nothing comes in, nothing goes out.
Okay, so there's gonna be nothing on Main Street.
She didn't apply for that.
Right, okay.
And one licensed bartender on site.
He always has to be
Yeah.
licensed.
Jared's gonna be there through the whole event.
And he's licensed.
Right.
Right.
So it sounds like we're being very consistent in what we've started out to do here by that.
Yep.
And that's what we wanna do.
The timing on this, the chamber meets this Thursday, so to finalize what this event is going to be, you know, ideally, they would have met last week and said, well, what's the support you've got? Well, in a way now, maybe it's turned in a favorable light where the council can then review an application for beer sales and consumption, or beer retailing, I guess you would say. You could approve and say, in that beer tent in the designated area, because that's what they're applying for. So if the request comes in to say, well, you know, up and down Main Street, up and down Elford, now we want to have beer, that hasn't been approved. Ideally, before this event takes place, everything's lined up with your approvals. We had given them a deadline of last week to get this application in so that you could come to this meeting. If there's a problem or a new request, you technically meet the Monday before this event. Now, we didn't want to tell them, hey, you've got, oh, that's right, it depends on Labor Day and how your meeting schedule goes,
Right
actually.
now, Public Works is meeting at that time.
Right.
Okay, never mind then. You have time if something would change, but in a good way, you can say, no, look, here's what we're approving, it's the beer tent. And that's really, to my knowledge, is what's been lined up.
That's just what I wanted to make sure that they,
Yes.
Or
because I read that.
they could have a special council meeting and we would charge them.
For the costs of having the meeting
Correct.
and all of that, yeah.
Can I ask a question?
It's up to the mayor to allow.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes.
Can council approve tonight that beer can be on Main Street without them requesting it? Can you do that tonight without them requesting it?
Check with attorney.
No,
Kelly on
no,
that.
no, I wouldn't recommend it. It's not on the application. They haven't asked for it. You're granting them arguably more than what they asked for. They could say that that's not part of their request.
What do you guys do during the tractor pulls, when everybody's walking around with a beer?
They have that
They-
filled out on the
Yeah, the
application.
whole
Right.
application.
They-
It's
they-
included.
There's a box on there to be checked,
Okay.
and at this time, it's not checked.
Yeah, that also gives the police the opportunity to kind of figure out exactly what they're gonna have to make sure is secured. And right now, we don't know exactly how much of the street they'd want.
We do have a good idea though.
Yeah,
I mean, on the beer tent, but now on free roaming open
right,
intoxicants.
we wouldn't have any idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on that temporary Class B retail license for the Weyauwega Area Chamber of Commerce? We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion's carried. All right, we'll move on to 7D, discussion of City Hall project financing options.
And for this, I will be hooking up with Ellers, John Cameron from Ellers, but they had a couple other bond issues that they were working on. I've got to hook up with them over the phone, so if you want to take a 5-minute break real quick.
Okay. If anybody wants to take a quick break?
This is your chance to go home, Frank.
Oh, all right, I'll take off quick.
Are we opening the street for Holly to her wedding?
Oh, yeah,
I'm gonna
no,
buy-
that's
I'm gonna
why I
buy
brought
your
the bags. No, that, I have a case at from Sam's Club.
How you doing? Good.
Yeah,
Probably should have wrote that into your contract, huh?
Yeah.
Supply gum.
they were $9.
You know what that,
Yeah.
the district should get? Is a copy of that pamphlet from the UW that goes through everything they're supposed to do. It's $10. I mean,
I had Bruce's son make me out the schedule for the Bears. So,
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm going to Chicago Saturday.
yeah,
Yeah.
Push Barrett.
and
Wow,
Sorry?
so you didn't wanna know. Going to Little
Yeah.
Italy.
Okay. All right, our recess is over. We will move in then to the discussion of the City Hall project financing options.
I'll give you a quick lead-in, and so for the record, we do have John Cameron from Ellers on the phone. He is hooking up by phone. He is down near the southeastern section of the state. Basically, and you have in your packet, and I have a couple extra copies if anybody's interested in some of the options that they pulled together for potential financing. Some of the questions we asked are, what is the impact on a $100,000 home? Those types of things John will get into. Just as a quick recap at where we're at in this project, we had received the phase 2 of the design from Cedar Corp. Their recommendation was, okay, moving forward, now you'll want to bring in Ellers or your financing consultant to take a look at this point, where are we at in the process? And that's where I'll introduce John Cameron from Ellers.
Great, thanks, Pat. Good evening, everybody. And just to kind of walk through the options here. So I think what we're talking about this evening is just some very general financing options. I think one of the items that we talked about with Pat was making sure that the city exhausted all of its options. You'll see here, one option is looking at a projected financing of $2.2 million, but applying some funds on hand from your existing fund balance. The other alternative out there would be if there's any potential grant sources for the project itself. So I think that's certainly an avenue that we would fully recommend that you exhaust, whether it be funds on hand and grants, or just grants or funds on hand, but certainly looking at all of your options for alternative sources of funding for this project. But just to walk you through the spreadsheet, if you're looking at the first page after the cover page that says financing options, and there's 3 different options to talk about this evening. All of them show the total project cost of $2.2 million. The difference between option 1 and option 2 is that option 1 assumes that you're going to apply $200,000 of funds on hand towards the project. That brings the total cost down to $2 million. Options 2 and option 3 don't assume that. Option 3, as we'll talk about here in a minute, is a 10-year financing with a balloon payment at the end that you would refinance for 10 years. So under all 3 options, you'd have finance-related costs included, which would be the financial advisor, bond counsel, paying agent, and then an underwriter's discount. So you can see the issue size at the bottom of the page under option 1 would be $2,050,000, and then options 2 and 3 would be $2.255 million. So if you go to the next page, what this is a rate impact analysis with the first option. So right now, this is based on this issuance is based on a sale that we recently did for the city of Lake Mills with an additional 45 basis points built into each year for the sizing. And really, this just gives you a very general idea based on market conditions as they exist today, what your total principal and interest payment would be on a roughly $2 million issuance. So this would be a 20-year general obligation bond, and you can see the payments start in 2015, assuming the project would be getting going in 2015. You do the borrowing next year. The total annual payment the first year would be roughly $121,000, and then it would scale up to about $150,000 by the year 2034. And I think as this gets closer to implementation, if this does get implemented, and your actual costs start to become a little bit better known, and you know a little bit more about fund balance or grant options. This is something that we want to work with and try to size the debt issuance either to match your existing debt service schedule, so as debt is dropping off, to try to keep things as level as possible. But again, this just gives you a very general idea of what that annual principal and interest payment would be. So you'd be levying anywhere between $120 up to $150 million or $150,000 between now and 2034 on an annual basis. Assuming the equalized value in the city would increase 1%, which is fairly conservative. A couple years ago, if we would have been running an analysis like this, we would have been looking at anywhere between 3 to 5% increased equalized value as conservative. So just a conservative 1% increase to your equalized value would give you, starting in 2015, if you look at the column in blue, it's a projected rate for debt service. So that is the effective tax rate for the annual principal and interest expense for this debt issuance. So it started at $1.36 a thousand and range upward to $1.41 a thousand. So if you look at then the items in red in the next column, the cost for a $100,000 home, $100,000 home, the tax impact would be $136 for this debt issuance, going up as high as $155 in 2022, and then it comes back down a little bit as you get closer to the retirement of the debt, down to $141. If you look at the next page, this is option 2. So you can kind of do a side-by-side between option 1 and option 2 to see how it would change if your debt issuance is a little bit higher. So if you don't apply any fund balance, you don't have any sort of grant funding, kind of a worst-case scenario of where you would be at in terms of financing. So the same scale here in terms of interest rate, but a little bit higher debt issuance overall. So if you go right to the far right-hand column, so in option 1, you were starting at about $136 per $100,000 of value on a home. Option 2 would be $169 tax impact, and then it goes up to about $168, and it comes back down to $145 by the end of the debt issuance. And then the final page, this would be a shorter time period where you would do it as a 10-year general obligation note instead of a bond with a balloon payment at the end that you would refinance for another 10-year period. So in this case, if you look at the far right-hand column, the impact would be $158 ranging upwards to $161 and then coming back down. But you see that in 2024, you would still have $1.4 million of principal outstanding that you would then refinance at that time for another 10-year period. So that kind of gives you the financing options in a nutshell to show you, I think, generally what the impact would be. So any questions?
Is 10 years the longest we can go on that?
Say that again?
He's asking, if you look at, he asked if 10 years is the longest you can go. Scott, under option 1 and 2, that assumes you're borrowing for 20 years.
Correct, right. You'd be assuming a 20-year period for your option 1 and 2.
There are some options.
And I think really 20 years is kind of the longest you would want to go on a project like this.
There are some options, and Thad may even be able to weigh it a little bit. Is it rural development or the?
Go 40 years.
You can go 40 years, but then the rate is higher. So Ellers has looked into different markets that you can go through, or different avenues. And at this point, they're saying taking it to the market for 20 years or for 10 years, however you go, is what they're seeing today as being the most beneficial rate. Now, we're not throwing this on the street today. So the caveat here is that everything you're looking at right now is a general, get the discussion going on how can you finance this, but they'll be able to zero in on the date that you bring it out to market, which we don't know at this point. in talking a little bit with Ellers about what we're looking at here, you know, John talks about worst case scenario. So option one is assuming we pay down, you know, if we're looking at a $2.2 million project, that we're going to pay up front 200,000 and then have to finance the rest. Now, the reality is there's a possibility we can get some grant funding for some of these items. Ellers, and I don't mean to steal John or Phil Constant's thunder, but what they're going to say is, in a way, make sure that you've identified your other financing sources first. And what that means is gonna be, how much do you wanna pay down on this out of fund balance? How much can you get in grants? Because what you cannot do is say, we're gonna borrow $2 million, and then, you know, a little, in the near future, find out that, oh, hey, we just got a grant for X number of dollars. Well, that's money that you wouldn't have to borrow for then. So you really can't.
Exactly, yes.
Well, I also
Yeah,
have a
go ahead.
I also have a concern as to what we put upon the citizens as a taxable rate increase as well.
In a way, what we're looking at, and we're not, and John, he had mentioned he's got a concern for, to paraphrase, the burden on the taxpayers to pay for this. Now, we're not going to be looking at any special tools to borrow beyond our limits or raise additional taxes. So in a way, and I should say that preliminarily because you haven't decided whether we're doing that, what we're assuming right now is that you fit it within our borrowing capacity and that you pay it with the existing amount of dollars we have on hand. So we'll still be collecting taxes in a way that you would do normally. And so, you know, but in a way, money that's spent on this has to come from somewhere. And we'll identify that when we get to it. We just have to figure out, you know, how are we gonna do it and what's that dollar amount?
Right, so what we don't show in this analysis
cameras. Battery died in the microphone. One AAA.
Move on, administrative report?
Aside from the items that are in the minutes from every committee that you have there, the one topic that I'd like to bring up to you, which is sort of piggybacks a little bit on the City Hall project. Last year was the first year since I've been here that we did the in-house citizen survey. And because there are about 800 households in the city, we sent one out to each household. Now, a lot of the survey, 6 to 7, 8 pages, is going to be the same questions. How do you rate the quality of life? Do you feel safe? Ranks out all of our services. How important do people feel they are? What is the quality of them? And you'll remember last year, I had sort of said that the first year you do this sets a baseline for how people are feeling. This year then you can start to do some better statistical things with the software that we have in-house. You can start developing trends as long as you do it every year. Now, my experience in other communities has been, if you commission a private survey, it can run you $8, $10, $15, $20,000. And you'll also remember that when I came to you, I said that the budget for this year for $1,200 for this survey was going to be sufficient, as long as we're able to do it in-house. We're going to do that again, because you put money in the budget for it. A lot of it, again, is going to be the same questions, but it's to keep continuity. But what you'll also remember is last year we had the lingering discussion on whether or not you should consider changing the ordinances to allow chickens or poultry in the city. And so you added that as a question, and you just straight out asked the public, do you feel that the council should consider changing the ordinance? And you didn't give any information on it, you just polled, what is the public feeling? And then what you found was 50% of the people really did not want you to consider changing the ordinance. And I believe it was 65% had some level of do not consider it. So you sort of got your answer there. There is going to be an opportunity for you to somehow put the City Hall project into this survey if you'd like. And it could be, if it's September or October that we send the survey out, usually it's out for 3 weeks to a month. Within 2 or 3 days after it closes, I would have an answer on whatever straightforward question you would ask people. So I guess I would ask you, first, my report would be that we're going to do the survey again, and that 98% of it is already going to be developed and put together. The 2% is going to be, what types of questions do you want to ask people? Last year, we talked about the chicken poultry topic, and after you did that and we reported the results, I don't know that you've heard too much about the chicken and the poultry topic, but it's not to tell the public to do your job for you, but in a way you're polling people. The fear would be you don't want to start asking all of the questions of the public, because after a while they're going to ask, well, what do we elect you to do, you know? But I think the City Hall project is probably a big enough project that on some level maybe you can weigh the public's feelings. So it's not on the agenda. I don't have anything for you to consider, except I would ask you to at least kind of keep it in the back of your mind. What type of question would you like to ask? We'll probably bring it back through the committees in early September, and then we could stagger the survey to be like a mid-September through mid-October. While we're taking a month or two to talk about financing, you know, you may be able to weigh some public opinion. So that's just an opportunity there that if you would like to, you know, the problem is how much information is out there, how much would you like to put out there without swaying the survey results, but we can get there, we can talk about it. Other than that, we're busy. We've got a lot of work going on, and now the rain is thankfully not washing us out downstairs here, and also it appears that the storm sewers, we did go through and clean those out within the last week here, that the grates are draining. Yeah?
They were flooding out there.
There you go. There you go. That's all I've got. Any questions, comments?
I would like to compliment you on how nice the compost center looks.
It's a work in progress.
It looks great.
For sure.
It really looks a whole lot better than it did a year ago. Fantastic.
Yeah. And part of that's been weighed by the fact that the DNR showed up for the first time in however many years and said, here, every 2 years, we're supposed to be here, but they hadn't been. They'll be here next year though to weigh in on, temperature monitoring, water runoff. Basically, they come to you and, we sort of took on the challenge that a lot of other communities, when the DNR showed up, a lot of communities just said, you know what, we're not going to keep this open, it's too much of a headache, and they just closed theirs. Now, we talked about it at committee, thought it was a pretty good service to keep continuing there. And we spent some money on it, but it's because for however many years, it's sad, and now you're starting to see we're not all the way there yet, but it's, from a year ago, I think we're doing something there. I appreciate it, thank you.
We move on then. Police chief's report?
We've also been busy. We just resolved a pretty significant burglary and theft complaint. We have several people in custody on that. In the last week or so, we've been preparing for all the additional people that are coming to town all day and all week at the Weyauwega County Fair, and we'll be tied up with that for the next 7 days.
Thank you. And we'll ask that we set the meetings for September.
Okay, finance is set for September 8th, 6 p.m.
Okay.
Public Works is September 15th at 6 p.m. And with Labor Day falling on a Monday, now we are putting council back to fourth Monday, September 22nd at 6:30. I ask, are we scheduling a police, fire, and ambulance, and when that would be?
We'll need to, won't we, because of the action that was taken tonight?
The action tonight,
And ordinance.
but the work on the ordinance, and then, if you want to have a joint committee even, but the problem there is you got two people you two are members of both committees there. so.
Yeah.
The work that you referred the attorney to look at was ordinance related work though,
Yeah,
so then it's,
but as you talked about earlier, it's not like you're trying to reinvent a wheel here.
No.
So,
No, I can have it ready for next.
next meeting, okay. How about,
Give me 2-3 weeks,
oh yeah,
yeah,
we've got
so I
that,
can fit it in with other stuff.
by design, we've got, I think, 3 weeks,
yeah, in between.
especially with Labor Day, it gives
That
us
one
extra
can be
week.
on.
Wednesday the 17th. Jerry, is that,
That's fine.
okay,
Looking at having police and ordinance the same night like we just did,
why don't we just do that, it seems to work out the best that way. So,
it's just a matter of Bruce and Cheney between that committee and their two committees.
Ordinance the topic.
does that work for you, Bruce?
Or maybe the other way around, ordinance first and then police. Well, either way, you're making recommendations, so it's nothing final that night.
Okay, all right. Okay, 6 p.m. Great. Thank you.
Okay, do we need a recreation committee? You wanna go over it in a pool stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. Bruce, do you have a inkling on a recreation committee date or time?
Next one.
You've got,
All I ask is not September 9th.
I just said that's right, wife's birthday.
That's my daughter's birthday.
Now we can get together.
We do the 10th?
It's a Wednesday.
Exactly.
It's a Wednesday, does that work? September 10th? Jim, does that work with you? 6 p.m.?
Sure.
And then the only other ones that we have would be public property or plan commission. Either one of them.
Plan commission, we're going to have something, but let me clarify that though.
Okay.
If related with $100.
Public property, is it?
No, we're not looking at buying any property or we should pay the public property. There's support.
Just a question, will those committees be able to function in the small room? Because I talked to Patrick about that, we're trying to set up for a book sale in here.
We'll just stand up the whole time, Frank, it's okay.
I know it's envisioned it to be that we can't, yeah.
Yeah, we'll make it
Okay.
work.
We'll make sure it's available for you, but just so that you're aware of it, so that
Okay.
the gals can set up in here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other meetings?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I would look for a motion to go into closed session. Say 1985-1G, Wisconsin statute, confirming the legal counsel for the government body, rendering oral or written advice concerning strategic to be adopted by the body and with respect to litigation of which it is and likely to become involved. The reason for the closed session is to discuss ordinance regarding the railroad. Council may choose to convene in open session at the conclusion of this closed session. Action on items from the closed session.
That'd be fine, because it could be nasty, because right now we're low in
Want to read that whole thing?
we could be high then.
So,
We have a motion.
Yes.
Second.
Already said.
But it's that last line that scares the heck out of me, and I thought, ooh, and the pay refinance, and it's up double to what it is now.
I